gonna stand by you.
All right, so hey everybody. I actually did this kind of a video, I guess it would almost be 2 years ago. And it is the things that you need to know before getting an Australian Shepherd. Someone very kindly suggested it to me, and it's a really good idea because I've had Aspen, my Australian Shepherd, for 2.5-ish years. So the first thing that I really do want to emphasize, and in all honesty, I hate disclaimers. For the majority of people, it's pretty unnecessary. But you kind of have to cater to the minority in YouTube videos, and a lot of people in my previous video that I did about the things to know before getting an Australian Shepherd were highly offended and commented a lot of not so nice comments in the comment section. So, disclaimer number 1 is with every single animal, with every Australian Shepherd, there's going to be something called individual variation. This means that every animal is not going to present itself in the exact same way. Animals aren't robots, of course, and every single breed is not going to be exactly the same when it comes to each and every animal within that breed. So the thing to remember when you're listening to this is that every animal is going to present itself differently, and they may not have every single characteristic that I talk about in this video. So that's disclaimer number 1. Disclaimer number 2 is I want people to know that when people are honest about a breed, a lot of times sensitive individuals can interpret it as someone bashing a breed, and that's not what I'm trying to do in any way, shape, or form. My opinion is that it's important to know the pros and the cons of something before going into it, especially getting an animal. And looking at the amount of Australian Shepherds that are in shelters, it's sad to see the amount of people that get an Aussie and don't expect the things that they're faced with. And so it's really important for us to talk about pros and cons, especially when it comes to making sure that these animals are really well taken care of and the people that are getting them are well aware of what to expect. So that's just my second disclaimer, and let's just get straight into this stuff because, yeah, I don't like to talk about all that kind of stuff, but I've put it out there. So the first thing that I'm going to cover with Australian Shepherds and things to expect has to do with their appearance. Now, I feel like a lot of people pick Australian Shepherds because they look a certain way. They're one of the most gorgeous dogs. I mean, they're drop dead gorgeous. Their eyes, their coat colors, everything about them is beautiful. But certain things about their appearance you have to take into consideration. So you have to realize the size of the animal. There's 3 different types of Australian Shepherds. There is the standard size, which is my dog's size. Aspen. So my dog is a standard size Australian Shepherd. Here she is. Aspen, will you come inside? You want a treat? Come here. Come here. Can you sit for me? Sit. Can you wave? Oh, okay. Give me a paw. All right. Give me kisses. Oh, good girl. So this is a standard size Aussie. And she's around, I think, 21-ish inches at the shoulders right here. You can also have a mini and a toy, and those are significantly smaller. So you always need to know what to expect with the size of your dog. You're a cutie pie. Thank you for coming. So the next thing that you have to think about is the fact that Australian Shepherds have a double coat. And what this means is that you're going to have to be dealing with a lot of shedding. A lot of shedding, especially when it comes to purebred Australian Shepherds. They will shed a lot right at the beginning of the spring and summer seasons, but in general, you have a lot of hair around the house. So the next thing you might want to consider is just health concerns of the breed in general. So look up certain things that can go wrong with the breed, stuff like collie eye anomaly, MDR1 mutations, stuff like that. I made a video on that. It's a really old video, but I will still link it down below, and it gives you a good idea of some of the health concerns with Australian Shepherds. So the next thing that you really do have to consider with an Australian Shepherd is the energy level. Aussies are pretty wound up dogs. They have a lot of energy, and if that energy isn't focused into something positive, it can many times go into something negative. So if you don't properly exercise your dog, then you can have a lot of issues with them tearing up floorboards or tearing up the carpet. They're going to preoccupy their mind with something. So if you don't give them a focus to kind of funnel that energy into, they will funnel it into something destructive. So that's a really good thing to keep in mind. What I would recommend is looking at probably the 5 top hobbies that you have. And if at least some of them don't involve like hiking, going on walks, doing outdoor activities where you can involve your dog, then probably an Aussie is not necessarily the greatest dog to be picking for someone that's more geared towards leisurely type stuff, like staying at home and watching videos versus going on a mountain hike or something like that. All right, so now we're gonna go into behavioral things. Like I said, remember, individual variation. Animals may not present exactly in the same way. So with an Aussie, one of the main things that I think people get confused about is their trainability. They're super, super smart dogs, but that does not mean that they're going to be the easiest dog to train. Having smarts does not equal an easy time training. With an Aussie, I think a lot of Aussie owners will understand this and will relate to this. They take a lot of time to train simply because they are so smart that they'll try to find ways around doing what you want them to do. So they're super stubborn when it comes to certain things, and you really have to have a specific personality type to be able to deal with this kind of breed. Someone that's a lot more passive, this breed may walk all over them. So it's a good thing to remember. I think that's one of the main things that I was shocked about with the breed when I first got it. I thought all over the place they're saying that Australian Shepherds are going to be super, super easy to train. You know, within 2-3 days I'll have her potty trained. Back when I was a kid, I had a Cocker Spaniel, and she took way longer to potty train than my Cocker Spaniel took. So it's just keeping that in mind. So this next trait that I'm going to talk about is vocalization. And some people would say that Aussies don't vocalize. Mine most definitely does. It's very similar to Husky vocalization. So she's very much into communication and communicating with me. So she has very different kind of pitches of barks and yips that communicate certain things. So she has a very excited bark. She has a very aggressive type bark. She has, you know, a kind of whining noise when she doesn't want to do something. She's just very vocal about things. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. She's really good at letting me know when she needs to go outside, or, you know, when she wants water and her water dish is empty, but it can be a little loud at times. So that's something to keep in mind. You may not always get an Aussie like that, but it is a possibility to get an Aussie like that. So these dogs are very nippy, and they have a very strong herding instinct. Now, I had some people on my previous video say that Aussies didn't nip at all. Well, they must be very far removed from the herding lines, because that is something that was very much selected for in their breed. You have to realize that these dogs are working dogs bred to herd livestock, specifically cattle. And that's where the stubbornness and the kind of nipping herding behavior comes into play. They had to be extremely stubborn because cattle are extremely stubborn. And so they had to have a very persistent nature, I guess I would say. So Aspen, when she was a puppy, that was the thing that we had the hardest time controlling and getting rid of, was nipping behaviors. And that isn't necessarily a big deal for someone that doesn't have little children or something like that, but it could be more of an issue with someone that has little children. So the next thing is some behaviors that I noticed in Aspen, and I definitely would say that these behaviors are not necessarily going to be found in a lot of Aussies. They're just behaviors that I saw in Aspen and could potentially be found in Australian Shepherds. A lot less likely than the herding behaviors and the vocalization. It would be things like being skittish. So she is very skittish of new things. So when she was a puppy, one of the biggest issues that we had was like big trucks or like the garbage truck coming to get the garbage in the morning. She was just terrified by stuff like that. We had issues with uncontrolled peeing. So when she would get highly excited or scared, she would pee. Now that behavior is basically gone. And then also one thing that a lot of Aussies deal with, and one of the reasons that a lot of Aussies get surrendered to shelters, is dog aggression. These dogs, if you're not consistent with training throughout their life, can develop dog aggression. So that's just something to keep in mind. Not necessarily all Aussies are going to show that kind of behavior, but definitely something to keep in mind that could potentially present in your Australian Shepherd. So the last thing that I want to include in this is something that I didn't know in my previous video. And I feel like I've talked to enough Australian Shepherd owners that there's pretty much a consensus out there, and a lot of kind of seasoned Aussie owners know about this, but it's the kind of 2-year rule. Aussies, for some reason, are very difficult to handle up until 2 years of age. You have to go through a lot of work in training and getting them trained outside with walking and all of that. And then also the energy level. For some reason, Aussies tend to mellow out a little bit at the 2-year mark. So it takes them a little bit longer than a lot of other dogs to grow out of that kind of puppy phase. And I feel like a lot of people get frustrated before that time and give up. And that's why we see so many Aussies in shelters. But the truth is, they will reach a certain age where they turn this corner and they become amazing dogs. Like just the greatest dog that you will probably ever own. So it's all about being persistent and getting through those first 2 years, because in the end, I mean, I love Aspen more than almost anything. Her and my family come first, and I would not trade those 2 years that I had to go through for anything, because she's an amazing dog, and I'm so happy that I went through that. And I actually would be willing to go through that for another Australian Shepherd at some point. But it's a lot to deal with in the first 2 years, but you just have to get through it, and you have to be ready for that commitment, that it's going to take you probably a good 2 years to get yourself to the point where you're happy with where your dog is. So just keep that in mind. It's a really good thing to keep in mind. I hope that this video was helpful in some ways. And if you guys have any other things to add, please feel free to leave them down in the comments below, so that anyone else that wants to get an Australian Shepherd can be really well informed. Remember, that's the whole point of this, is to get people well informed so that hopefully people don't jump into things before knowing what to expect. And that's how we make sure that every Aussie around the world has a happy home. So I hope you guys have a really great day, and I will see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.